I'm Matt Pillar, host of the Business of Biotech podcast. And if you're listening to my voice right now, but not seeing my face, maybe you haven't heard that we've launched a new Business of Biotech videocast page under the Listen and Watch tab at bioprocessonline.com. There, you'll find hundreds of videos of my interviews with biotech builders, categorized by topic like finance and capital markets, regulatory, discovery, and manufacturing. Don't try it if you listen while driving, but be sure to check it out when you get where you're going. Go to bioprocessonline.com, hit the Listen and Watch tab, and choose Business of Biotech in the dropdown. Yochi Slonim made a name for himself in global tech hubs around the world, from San Francisco's Silicon Valley to Tel Aviv's Silicon Wadi. Notably, he was co-founder of billion-dollar Mercury Interactive, which HP acquired for $4.5 billion. And previous to that, a leader at Technomatics, which sold to UGS and eventually was acquired by Siemens. Those were the bigger deals that came on the heels of several other of Yochi Slonim's startups. What's all that got to do with the Business of Biotech? I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech. On today's episode, we're visiting with Yochi to learn about his foray into biopharmaceuticals with Amina Biotech, a company he's been building for the past 10 years. Anima's approach to tech-enabled drug discovery and development is multi-pronged, yielding, as you may have guessed, a target and drug discovery and development platform, a handful of partnerships with some very heavy hitters in big bio, and a deep development pipeline of its own. Yochi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure to have you. We're honored. And before we get into the Amina story and go too deep into the technologies that you're building, we need to kind of get a background on you. Because as I mentioned in that intro, before you were a biotech entrepreneur, you were decidedly a tech entrepreneur, primarily in software. What motivated the move to get into biotech?
That's actually a funny story, I would say, and very unconventional, because you would expect somebody to sit and plan, what they're going to do. And indeed, I built and took public or sold several software companies. And the way that this got started, I was working with startup companies as an investor. And I was introduced to the technology idea of Amina by my co-founder, and I became the first investor in the company. I looked at this, and he was kind of presenting it to me in a way that appealed to me, because my last software company was something that actually I did several software companies in the field of automated software testing and debugging. And this company was actually quite easy to explain. It was like a black box that you have on the airplane that records the flight. When it crashes, you can see what happens. They dig the black box and they investigate, and you can hear what happened in the cockpit and see all the different engine conditions. And so this was actually a black box for software application. It would record everything that happens in the software application. And then if something happens wrong, you could go back in time and investigate what happened. Yeah. So we were selling this to banks, financial institutions, e-commerce sites, all these complex stuff. And I sold this company to BMC Software, back in 2006, and I was looking for other stuff to do. And then he came to me and he said, I have a black box for cells, for biology. It records everything that is happening in the cells, and actually it records it in images. And you can see the ribosomes making the proteins, and the proteins are made from mRNA, which I knew nothing about back then.
Yeah.
And this is like a processor that executes software code, and the mRNA is the software code, and the ribosomes run over it, and you can see all that in images. And this recording is like a black box. Now you can go back and understand why a disease is happening, for example, because the assembly of the protein went wrong, the translation went wrong. So this kind of looked to me like a tech company. And I asked him, so we are going to build like an imaging system over all these cells? And yes, we are going to build it. And I had not much, other than a hunch about it, but I decided to bet on it. I don't even remember why. And I became an investor in the company. And this dragged me on kind of down a rabbit hole that was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
And that became a very long rabbit hole, because the timelines, I wasn't aware of the timelines of actually doing things. But then I became aware that this technology generates images, and tons of them, millions of them, and this is like big, deep data. And it kind of attracted me that with all my skills in technology, we could build a platform that would kind of look at all that data and start to analyze it. And this was still an academic phase, but it drew me back very, very strongly into biology, which was a challenge by itself, by the way.
Real quick, Yogi, just to put a timestamp on this, this was like, so Anima was founded, I think officially founded, like 2014, but this period that you're talking about was quite a few years before that, correct? Like you guys were talking about the foundations of this technology in what year roughly?
We are talking about the idea stage, which was the initial journey was back then, which led us to the University of Pennsylvania, where we were parked in the academia actually for 10 years. So between 2005, where this was actually invented as an idea, until 2014, it was sitting in the academia and the platform technology, so to speak, was developed.
Yeah, and I just wanted to get that specification because it's important context in the context of this conversation around big data and bio. 2005 was eons ago. Like that was some early days for the concept of big data in biotech.
Indeed. And I was actually involved back then in another aspect of big data, which was super interesting for me, was fintech. And fintech was about, let's predict the stock market. Yeah. It's again, huge, big data, and let's see if we can do something with it. So there was no like AI, but people were talking already about the early, I would say, phases of what became machine learning. And they were trying it both algorithmically, but both like, let's do it non-algorithmically. It's kind of seeing the conditions and just acting on them based on patterns. So that pattern recognition is the beginning of, if you want to say it, AI in many ways, clustering of information, learning from big data, but it wasn't yet AI. But the roots of that, which actually appealed to me, were already, as you were saying, back many years ago.
Yeah. And at the time, I mean, the technology was cool. You were starting to envision some applications for it, but in those years, there was no way probably in the back of your head that you thought, I want to be a drug developer. I want to develop a pipeline of drug candidates.
When we took the technology out of the university, it was capable of doing in a single cell, in a single experiment, visualize all the mRNA translation events in light pulses. These images were looking like the Milky Way at night, with the stars glowing. Mm-hmm. Wherever proteins were working on the mRNA of interest, it was showing light. Whenever they were not doing it, it wasn't. So you could see where, when, and how much of a particular mRNA, specific one, is being translated. And I was looking at that, and I don't know why, by the way, because I didn't know much about biology. We'll talk about it later, how I became a biologist down the road. But I actually looked at that and I said, but this is valuable as an academic tool. If we want to do something with it, what it's going to be. And I don't know why, because I didn't even knew back then the words drug discovery. But I said to myself, in every industry, you need to go for the main street, not for the side streets to look for the interest and the money. And so I said, maybe this could help us, treat diseases. And then my co-founder, a biologist, and she said, well, this is called drug discovery screening. This is what we can do with that. We could actually turn this into a big platform that is looking at millions of these images. And where there is light, there is protein being made, we'll be looking for small molecules that are modulating the light. If they turn off the light, they kind of inhibit the production of the protein. If they increase the light, they increase the translation of the protein. And I was asking her, this is something that people are doing? She said, yes, screening, but not like this. This is high content screening at high throughput. We'll need to do deep screening, seeing all these images and doing this over millions and millions of them. over hundreds of thousands of compounds, and I don't know how to do that. I said, wait, this level of automation is like tech company. I know how to do that. Yeah. Let's do that together. It's like the biology essays, seeing the biology with the automation at scale over the big data that is generated. This seemed to me like a tech bio, as it is called today. Mm-hmm. But kind of we were a perfect fit, for starting an idea like that.
Yeah, you mentioned. I want to get to that part about transitioning and learning, right? The bio aspect. You mentioned, in the beginning, being introduced to this technology, not knowing necessarily what a ribosome or RNA was, and then having these conversations with your co-founder. What's her name, by the way?
Iris Elroy.
Iris Elroy. So when you first started,
she's the chief scientific officer of the company today.
Mm-hmm. And when you and Iris first started talking about the concept of building a business around this, and you were speaking entirely different languages, you hinted just now at the synergies. Like, hey, she knows what drug screening looks like and how this might benefit that application, and you know how to make the application. But what were some of maybe the more challenging aspects for you in your transition into biotech, learning biology, becoming a biologist, as you say?
So first I understood pretty quickly that I really don't know biology. And I decided that this is something that I have to know, but actually I became very interested because I was as an investor, as I said, in the company for a while, and then I became the chairman of the company, and then I became kind of an acting CEO of the company while it's still, in process. And I kind of started my journey, and I decided that I'm going to do it lightweight initially, and I was taking courses in biology online, universities. Mm-hmm. And it kind of became, 5 courses per year. And now we are talking about several years. So all of a sudden I'm with like 25 courses in biology behind me at the time that we are starting the company. So I didn't know about how actually it is done in the industry. So a drug screening platform, I wasn't aware of that, but I had the tools already to understand what it could do. And the idea of pathways in mRNA biology, what they mean, that we could see them, we could visualize them, we could find compounds that modulate them. Already I had that in mind. So now it connected back to the tech side, and I could envision how a large scale, I would say massively parallel automated system could run in a lab and actually do that training and basically analyze all that data. So it kind of was at the right time, coming to me while I understood already enough biology. I continued to study biology over the years, and actually I can interact, with any biologist from a pharma company, and I'm doing this routinely, although I usually deal more with the business side right now and the strategy of the company.
Mm-hmm. When you started to, I guess that's sort of a two-part question. When you started to sort of formulate the concept of the business, right? Like we've got something that we can build a business around. We've got a product, right, in development that we can build a business around. One, sort of tell me that story. Like when was the moment where you're like, okay, like this is more than cool technology. We've got something that we can develop into a sellable product. And then two, I guess on the back half of that question, building tech bio teams, especially then in the lead up to the launch of the company, it was a new concept. In hiring to outfit those teams with talent, to this day is a challenge. A lot of companies struggle with sort of the whole brain tech bio kind of approach. So I'm curious about how you built the team. So like I said, two-part question. There might be a big jump in between the two questions, but one, when was the aha moment? We've got something that we can build a company around. And then two, how did you go about building the company from an HR standpoint with talent that could meet your needs?
So the first one actually was not a singular moment, because while we were at the academia, we actually ventured out to partner with additional academic institutions, and we actually struck 17 academic collaborations that led to many publications. So it gave like more and more and more, kind of a feeling that there is something real here. Yeah. And we should be doing a real company around that technology. It's so unique. So I decided to take the technology out of the university, after I saw so many different applications and users, so to speak, that basically had a very limited research license to the very early phase to conduct a single experiment, so to speak, okay, and visualize their proteins and mRNAs of interest. And so that kind of occurred to me naturally. I wasn't at a point and say whether it is a company or not. It already kind of transitioned in my mind to what are we going to do with that as a company. And that meeting where I was kind of introduced, I asked the question, can we do treatments of diseases, discovery of drugs? And then I heard that there is this concept of screening, and big pharma companies are doing that, but not in that way and not with that technology. It was the aha moment for me. Okay, this is big. If we could do this, and then my question was right away, as you were saying, about the team, because I built companies in the past, and I know that this is extremely critical. There are many good ideas that people come to you with, and they say, I want to do this company. And you think about it, it's a great idea, but not for this team, because they cannot get it off the ground. They don't have the skill. So I was thinking, this is biology, imaging, bioinformatics, a lot of software, big data, data analysis. What kind of, and chemistry eventually. I was not aware of that in the beginning, but we built in-house a lot of chemistry. I was initially thinking this we can take from CROs outside and so on. So essentially, this is a multidisciplinary team and a hard team to build. So we had actually the biology and the image processing covered between the biologist co-founder and an image processing a person. And then I brought all the software people from my previous companies quite easily, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the company's pretty sizable right now. I mean, I didn't take an official count, but I was kind of cruising through the website. You got a pretty stout team. How many people do you employ at this point?
Around 100.